Story 1. The smell of a Dakota Dodge truck cold starting in the morning and driving to Albertsons to pick up a donut and orange juice. Story 2. My grandmother's apple pie cools on the windowsill. Every Sunday, she would bake one, and I would sit there doing homework just to catch that first heavenly whiff of cinnamon and butter. I miss you, Grandma. Story 3. Swimming pool water on hot concrete. The leather of a horse saddle, lantana bushes, coconut oil, Indian love oil, drum tobacco, and disinfectant. So many. Story 4. There is a particular smell when waiting in line at the ET ride in Universal Orlando. It reminds me of simpler times when the family was still together. Story 5. My dad smoked a pipe for the first 10 years of my childhood, and it reminds me of that period. Only pipe tobacco has this effect. Cigarettes and cigars smell different. Story 6. Cake is baking in the oven. My grandmother always seemed to have a cake baking. The first thing I would smell upon returning from school. Story 7. Dawn dish soap smells exactly like my grandmother's bathroom from my childhood. Every time I wash something in the sink, I'm reminded of the wonderful memories I have of her. Story 8. The smell of the kitty litter used to sprinkle over the vomit after someone got sick in the classroom or hallway. Story 9. Play-Doh, March spring rain, and grass for track season. Heavy chlorine, grandmother's perfume, mother's shampoo, and father's pipe tobacco. Lilacs and roses, along with several wet dogs. Story 10. Sun-scorched grass. We moved from the Northeast United States to the plains, and I first discovered what a dead, brown lawn smelled like. Story 11. Zaxby's fries. I grew up in Oxon Hill, Maryland. Sometimes my parents took us to Chesapeake Bay to get seafood for dinner, and there was a French fry house down the block from my apartment complex. The scent of the fries cooking takes me back to 1992 every time. Story 12. The Perfume Angel by Mugler. My mom used to wear it all the time. It reminds me of staying up late to watch entertaining shows from the 2000s with her. Story 13. A very distinct kind of rubbery smell and licorice. My mom worked in a candy factory, and I would pass the production line whenever I went down to see her in her office. Story 14. Two things. The musty smell from a car enthusiast's garage. A mix of paint, oil, gasoline, and metal. The inside of child-sized surgical masks, as my mom often made us wear them everywhere when anyone got sick, including at school. Story 15. Old Spice and the smell of a Zippo lighter firing up bring back memories. My grandparents were smokers, and my grandfather wore Old Spice. Story 16. Play-Doh. The moment that salty, unusual scent hits my nose, I am transported back to kindergarten, creating lumpy snowmen and oddly shaped animals. I tried smelling it recently, and it is exactly the same as it was 25 years ago. Story 17. I was in daycare a lot as a child, and when my mom would pick me up, she would smell like a casino, and her purses were always made of leather. She worked in a casino. She wasn't a gambling addict. Story 18. My grandmother's perfume, White Shoulders, reminds me of her loving, caring, and elegant nature. Although she was not my father's biological mother, every time I smell her perfume, I am instantly transported to our home, remembering her kindness and attentive nature. Imiskia. Story 19. Fabric stores. One of my mother's main hobbies was sewing, and she would take me to fabric stores with her since I was a baby. The smell of various fibers and the detergents or coatings on fresh fabric always reminds me of any fabric store I visit. Story 20. Cigarettes and leather sound a bit odd. My mom smoked and wore a leather jacket. That combination reminds me of hugging her goodbye. Story 21. The smell of a parts washer in operation, combined with the scent of welding fumes and cigarette smoke in the air, evokes powerful memories. One memory that stands out is visiting the oil shop and talking to the technicians up close. I feel an urge to give them a hug every time and take in the scent of their uniforms. The grease mixed with hard work will always remind me of my childhood. Story 22. Chamomile soap. My sisters and I received Cabbage Patch Kids soap one year, and the smell immediately takes me back. Story 23. Fresh crushed garlic. As a kid, I had a strong obsession with marinated mushrooms. However, in 2000, they became expensive and my mom decided not to buy them. She pretended they stopped making them for years. When I found my first jar again at 20, it cost $13. I bought it, kicked in the door and exclaimed, "Wow!" Then I smashed the jar because it was so scrumptious. Story 24. I have been using different shaving gels for about 30 years. Then I bought a cheaper shaving foam. The first time I lathered up, I was transported back to the early 90s and my childhood home's bathroom. It smelled identical to the shaving foam my dad used when I was growing up. Just a basic, ordinary shaving foam. Smell is a powerful thing. Story 25. I don't know. There are two particular smells that I find occasionally, but I don't know what they are. Sometimes I just freeze for a minute. Story 26. Seagram's 7 and 7-Up cocktails. I was raised by alcoholics. I used to be a bartender, and whenever I made a 7 and 7, which has a very distinct smell, I think of my grandfather. Story 27. Driving to the gate of Holiday Park Het Meerdal in the Netherlands. My family and I visited this park several times a year for over a decade when I was a child. Story 28. The smell of lumber from Home Depot brings back fond memories. All the trips there with my grandfather while growing up were some of the best days of my life. Story 29. Gun cleaning oil. My dad used to clean his weapons while I watched. He taught me how to disassemble, clean, and reassemble them. Story 30. Bath and Body Works brown sugar fig mixed with warm vanilla sugar. My mom would get ready for work and set me up in front of The Sims 2 in our shared bedroom. Every time I see the birthday cake or gelatin mold in the game, I can smell her body spray combination. Story 31. Things like modeling clay, crayons, plastic book covers in the library, and the scent of cigar smoke in the summer air that evaporates as it drifts into my yard. Story 32. Car oil. I used to love sitting with my grandpa in his garage while he repaired cars. He was a mechanic. Story 33. I smelled like churros. I spent every Sunday at 11 a.m. in my neighborhood, in that van like in an American movie. It was so cool. Story 34. This is very specific, but my grandparents sold their house, which is literally a 1-minute walk from my business. My grandfather started it, and it has been handed down through the family. The new owner asked if I could shovel her roof one morning. I walked over to the house and entered through the garage. The moment I walked in, I was flooded with old memories of him trying to teach me golf, playing with my cousins, and just enjoying my time there. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. I hadn't been in that garage for about 25 years, and the smell overwhelmed me. It's amazing what a certain smell can evoke. Story 35. It's a bit unusual, but for me, it's oatmeal cookies. My dad used to have a small motorboat that we would take out into the Louisiana swamps, where we would swim. I vaguely remember packing some cookies as a snack one time. The smell or even the taste brings me back. I still miss it. Story 36. Opening a bag of Funyuns, along with the smell of brand new Converse All-Stars or Vans checkerboard slip-ons. Story 37. There was a gel pen called Wonder Gel. These pens were scented, and I recently discovered a flower that smelled the same, realizing that this was what the pen smelled like. Story 38. Salon Selective's apple-scented hairspray and mousse. Liz Claiborne perfume. New JCPenney catalog. Plastic pool floats. Sunlight dish detergent. Story 39. Artificial grape. I believe that flavor was included in pencil erasers, pog slammers, and various other toys for no clear reason. Story 40. Burning leaves. I had a large piece of land, and my grandfather was often burning piles of leaves. Story 41. I am unsure if that counts, but when it is spring and the sun is warm while the winds are a bit chilly, I smell fragrances reminiscent of my youth. Story 42. There is a high-protein powdered milk mix that we fed to bottle calves. It has a unique smell, and the best part was the calves running up to you because they loved it. Story 43. Meringue. I lived with my grandmother, and she would make it in the mornings for her bakery. I would always get a spoonful. Story 44. Camping gear after being stored in the shed over winter has a distinct odor. If earwigs had a smell, that would be it. Story 45. The smell of dirt in the air indicates poor air quality. Some places have it, and it is refreshing in a mental way to experience it again. Story 46. Vintage kids' lunch pail. Whenever I am in an antique store and see an old lunch pail, I always open it and smell it. It completely takes me back to the school cafeteria. Story 47. The substance that surfaced from the septic field in our backyard during the summer made your eyes water. Story 48. Insulin. My mom was diabetic and used an insulin pump and pen. I have a small fabric piece with a bit of insulin on it in an airtight box that I smell when I miss her. I keep it next to a small shrine I created. Story 49. This may sound unusual, and I am late in sharing it, but there is a very distinct smell when the exhaust of a two-stroke dirt bike mixes with freshly torn up soil. I cannot explain it, but it is the most remarkable and powerful smell imaginable to me. Boaters can likely relate to the smell of boat exhaust rising through the saltwater. It's truly unique. Story 50. Pine Sol immediately transports me back to the bathroom at my first daycare center, which I attended until I was 3 years old. Story 51. Mowing the lawn. I have mowed my lawn thousands of times in almost 60 years, but every now and then, I am 8 or 9 years old, and my dad is teaching me how to mow. Takes me right back. Story 52. Prel shampoo. As a kid, I would sit in the bathtub until I turned into a prune. I had my Fisher-Price radio, battery-operated with an attached microphone, sitting on the edge of the tub. I would play top 40 music from the 1980s at full blast and sing along until the water turned cold. My mother always bought Prel shampoo, so anytime I smell it, I feel like I'm 7 years old, back in that bathtub all over again. Story 53. I cannot describe the smell, but it reminded me of the taste of drinking water from a hose in the summer. Story 54. Knitting factory. It is a combination of grease, oil, steam, warm wool, and quite distinctive. My father was an industrial knitter, and with little regard for health and safety, my mother used to take me to visit him sometimes. Story 55. The smell of pig entrails being processed is overwhelming. I can't tell if it's the blood or the antiseptic, but that odor is intense. Story 56. Whiskey and pipe smoke. I had a Scottish family on one side. I spent a lot of happy time with relatives during the evenings when the adults were drinking. You felt tired, warm, safe, and loved, already in your pajamas, watching a family movie or playing a game. That was the comforting smell in the room. Even now, the smell of pipe smoke brings me comfort. Story 57. Apple crumble. My parents' house had an apple tree in the backyard when I was very young. It was old and dying, so it produced some good apples, but not many. They eventually had to cut it down when I was 6 or 7. Story 58. The smell of rain on a hot summer day and how the air smells just before it snows. A bakery in action reminds me of when I was a child. It's not so much the sweet smell inside the store, but rather what comes out of their exhaust. It's very distinctive. Freshly ground coffee beans also add to the experience. Story 59. Cigarette smoke and leather. Whenever I fell asleep at a relative's house as a child, my dad would carry me back into the house, and I would catch those scents from his coat. This topic came up in conversation recently, and it turns out we share a similar childhood scent since my grandfather used to do the same for him when he was young. It's just an interesting tidbit. Story 60. Crayola crayons, soft soap with the tropical fish on the bottle, Play-Doh, new beach balls, wet pavement on a hot day, and buttered popcorn remind me of how Target used to be. Story 61. Smoke from chimneys during the winter, along with the smell of fresh, unpolluted, cold, and crisp air, creates a unique atmosphere. Story 62. Cinnamon pine cones. I remember walking into a craft store and feeling really excited. I would always say, "It smells like Christmas," but it doesn't smell like that anymore at all. Story 63. Certain perfumes mixed with brewed coffee and certain colognes create a pleasant combination. Additionally, Cough drops and mothballs remind me of my godmother's house. Story 64. Lit Medics brings back vivid memories of finding Christmas trees at my parents' friend's tree farm. Story 65. Freshly mowed grass was a reminder of the time I spent mowing the lawn for 1 or 2 hours every weekend. Yes, it took that long. Story 66. Mown grass. I remember playing with my little people toys in the backyard on an afternoon during a cloudy day. Story 67. This is a strange memory. Purell hand sanitizer. Every time I smell it, I recall lining up in class to get a pump of hand sanitizer from the teacher in elementary school. It's specifically Purell because that was what most teachers always had. Story 68. Play-Doh, Tums, Brita water, and bad breath represented an abusive home before I was adopted. In my adopted home, there was sunshine, the smell of fresh bread, church pews, and my adopted brother's chocolate-scented cologne. Story 69. The smell of a coat closet and some thrift stores reminds me of my grandmother's house. Additionally, the scent of cement after rain takes me back to my teenage years. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.